Thank y'all for being here. I want to start, just appreciate the crowd that was here. Thought we had and really everybody that was part of creating a great atmosphere on Saturday. We just didn't deliver, didn't coach or play well enough to be a quality opponent. I'm not sure we could have beat a subpar opponent on Saturday. We just did not play very good football. Very erratic in 2 out of 3 phases. For a veteran team, just disappointing how we performed. And and I take ownership of it. You know, the product on the field is on me, and I wasn't very fired up about it. I'm sure our fans weren't very fired up about it. To recap the game just quickly, I'll start with special teams. I thought that was the bright spot. Encouraged with how we played over there. Only phase that we won the game. We won the hidden yards. I'll do this in all 3. It's kind of the same routine I've always done for you guys that have been here. That the negatives, the things we got to improve on. We ran a guy right into our punter. Can't do that. And he was probably going to run into the punter on his own, but we put his hands on him. And then our kickoff return unit and our punt return, we got to give our guys some chances. I think Preston in particular is really talented punt returner, and we didn't give him enough room. We got to do a better job holding up guys on the line of scrimmage. The positives, we had several. I thought our cover teams were very good. All 4 times we punted were fair catches. We punted the ball extremely well. Hang time, distance for Ali. Our kickoff team looked different. We played really fast and really physical. If you look at Zay Jennings and Jaden Bray, we look quite a bit different than the last couple games of last year against Baylor and North Carolina when we just were not very good on that team. We've got speed, and we played fast there. And then we defended the swinging gate when they went for 2 and out of their field goal formation there after their first touchdown. We defended that, and I thought that was well coached up. So pleased with our special teams. We got to continue to grow them, and hopefully we'll be talking about takeaways and touchdowns on special teams. But I was really, like I said, I was really encouraged with how we played. Defensively, just not good enough. I think. And this is probably from a team perspective. Sometimes stats don't tell the story, but in this game they do. If you look at it from rushing, we averaged 2.3. They are 2.7. I think they were 5.3. They rushed for 222. We rushed for 85. And the big reason why is because negative plays, something you can't have versus those guys, and snaps caused ours. If you look at turnover margin, they had 1, we had 3. If you look at the middle late, so last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes, second half, really where the game was decided, 14-3 them. But I can continue going. But let's go back to defense. But I think stats do tell a story in this game. They don't always, but they did in this game for sure. Our rushing defense was not good. We gave up explosive runs, a lot of quarterback scrambles. And if you go back and rewatch the game, we'd have stop, 2-yard, 3-yard, and the explosives are what killed us. That in the quarterback run game, and a lot of those were on scrambles. We just generated 0 pressure. He's a quarterback that struggled with pressure coming in, and we just didn't generate any. So that was disappointing. And then we struggled when they went unbalanced and when they tempoed us, and so we'll continue to see that, I'm sure. I think that was a communication sideline to players, player to player, but just wasn't good enough. The positives defensively, 3 takeaways, 0 points off turnovers. So did a really good job defensively putting out the fire. We played physical. We tackled. We hit them. We didn't get pushed around on the line of scrimmage by any means. And I thought if you look at guys that really played well, Anthony Wilson played well. Josiah Trotter played well. Jaheim Joseph played well. So encouraged with the way that those 3 guys played. Offensively, just below our standards. Like the turnovers, we had ball issues repeatedly, and you're not going to beat quality people, and that's something we didn't do last year. And we had 3 turnovers, and we put the ball on the ground a couple more times. Just that's bad football, and we struggle with just basic functioning football. Snaps, red zone. If you look at it, as bad as we played, if we just scored in the red zone, then we have a ball game. We had it in the red zone the exact same amount of times they did, and we were 1 for 4 there. We don't convert a 4th and 1. We kick 2 field goals and we get a touchdown, and that's the game right there. And our perimeter blocking, we didn't do a good job running guys off. We had some 10, 12-yard runs that would have been 30 and 40 if our receivers did what they were supposed to do. We had 4 drops on potential explosive plays with guys that usually make those. That hadn't been an issue for us. And just disappointing because we got the talent to play a lot better than that. And that's but we didn't. And so positives, had 0 penalties. Thought we did a really good job versus their ends. I think we got 5 penalties on them. We mixed our snap count up. We really played with tempo when the officials would actually get the ball spotted, and so that was we really did a nice job versus those guys. They weren't huge factors in the game. They got a couple of rushes late, but really kind of non-factors. So that was a positive. And to wrap it up, just to close out that game, it's not going to make or break us. I think I told you all that a week ago. This game wasn't going to make or break us. The frustrating thing is you work to get to a point where you play a game that's on a national stage, and we just didn't produce. And there's no reason to be in denial about it. It is what it is. And you gotta like our guys watched it today. You gotta learn. You gotta own it. You gotta learn from it. And you gotta grow. And that's kind of where we're at. We got to grow from it. And our season's still in front of us. There's been a lot of good West Virginia teams that got beat by Penn State in its history and bounced back and have had special years. And there's no reason why this team can't do the same. We've got an opponent coming in this week that has played football at a high level. This Albany team. The thing that sticks out to me the most as I watched them last night and this morning is extremely well coached. This is a group that played in the semifinals last year of the FCS. I'm sitting there watching them beat Idaho in the I think it's the Kibbe Dome, and I played there when we were at Troy when Idaho was FBS. That's a tough place to play, and they go out last year and win in Idaho. And I'm watching that game thinking, Idaho almost beat Oregon, and so I think that puts some that gives you some perspective on what kind of team that's coming in here. It's a team that's used to winning. It's a team that plays in a really good conference, the CAA. It's one of the top 2 or 3 FCS leagues in the country. Coaching that myself for a number of years. And these guys do a really good job schematically in all 3 phases. And I'll start kind of on offense. Last year they were really good throwing the football, but it started with the run. They're going to give us a bunch of different formation looks. They want to establish the run. Offensive line-wise, they've got really good size, especially at the FCS level. I think they got 3 guys up front that are good enough to play in our league. And they've got a receiver that had a big game last week or on Saturday night that started his career at Oregon. Overall, they got 20 Division I transfers. I think 6 guys that were on Power 4 rosters a year ago. So they've got guys that can play at this level, and they're not going to be intimidated. They gave Marshall everything they wanted and more last year down in Huntington. And so defensively, they line up and play. They're a 4-down front that bases out of cover 4, and they play really gap-sound defense. They tackle. Their defensive line is really well coached. They've had several guys that have left there in the last 3 and 4 years and gone on to Power 4 schools and then been drafted. And so they really are good at developing guys on that defensive line. And they've got 2 corners that can really run, that they play man covers. Regardless who they're playing, they've lined up and played man. And so, and they're sound in their special teams. They do some things that we've got to work. They're a little bit unique, but they're a good football team. This is the best FCS program we've had come in here since the first game in 2019 when we played James Madison. And so they've got our attention. We're an 0-1 football team till we do something about it, and we've got a great opportunity on Saturday night. Get under the lights. My message to our fans is I wouldn't lose faith on one game. We didn't perform well. Penn State's got a good team, but we'll bounce back and we'll get back on track. And we've got a good football team, and we just got to go out and show it. And so it starts this week with our next opportunity. So I hope fans turn out. It should be a nice night. We're going to get to see the lights for the first time, and so looking forward to that. So Greg, open us up.
So start up front on both sides of the football. I mean, admit it, and you said after game, Penn State's very good. So, but you guys struggled there seemingly. Your thoughts, having watched tape?
Well,
problems on both sides.
So I can I'll try to explain it to you. So, offensive line wise, if you go back and you just watch it, and we didn't do as poor a job running the football as the numbers show. Now, they are what they are. I'm not trying to convince you that numbers are lying. But we had a minus 16 on the snap that hit the receiver. That was the quarterback's fault. And then the hot snap was minus 11. So we had minus 27. And then on the pass play where Garrett fumbled was another minus 7 or 8. And so you add all that minus yardage, and it looks worse than it actually was, okay? So our point of contact, we had one outside run. It was on a 1st and 10 going toward the weight room where we had Jaheim kind of went backwards and we lost 6 yards. And that was really the only significant negative run we had that wasn't self-induced, right? Their 3 technique Durant kid, who we really recruited hard, he made a nice play on our left guard. But our play up front wasn't as poor as the numbers show, okay? I thought we did a really good job on their edge people. Their quickness in the interior bothered us some. But I thought we got expansion on their ends. I thought we got good movement. Jaheim, we didn't get enough touches. He got injured and missed a good chunk there in the second, third quarter. But we didn't get him enough touches in general. But I thought he and CJ did some good things in the run game. I thought Traylon Davis did some good things in the run game. We've got to be more consistent versus the movement inside, and Cole's got to play a lot better for us in the run game. And then our receivers, they're playing man coverage, and we got to run those guys off. And so we probably left 30 to 50 yards in rushing offense out on the field just because our receivers didn't run off. And that was disappointing. And you can turn on our film from last year, and we were as good as anybody that was playing and running people off. And for whatever reason, we did not do that on Saturday. And so I say all that to say that our offensive line play was better than what the rushing numbers look like. And then our quarterback made some poor decisions in the run game, which attributes to that as well. On the flip side, defensively, we didn't necessarily – our issues were not just because they knocked us off the ball. It's probably and if that was the case, I'd come in here and say that. That wasn't the case. They didn't physically knock us off the ball. But we did a really poor job we did not do a good enough job in any of our run games. We did a really poor job in our pass lanes because we were too fast. And when we were running games, and I'm talking about D-line games, on passing downs, we were too fast and left big gaps, which I haven't calculated the scramble yards, but it's quite a bit. You know, it's probably 50 or more in scramble yards. And then we over pursued the ball in outside zone. And so we had several cutbacks because we over pursued the ball. And so for us, I think it's about simplifying what we're trying to do in the run game and making sure our cutback lanes are in better spots. That'll be the first thing. But we didn't get knocked off the ball. We didn't. That's why I don't have an issue with our physicality. But our execution was not very good, and they outgapped us on a couple unbalanced plays. I got a little, probably more footballish than y'all probably wanted, but.
Yeah, how much of the stuff on defense stems from just not getting enough pressure on Allard?
Well, his completion percentage was not very good with pressure. Now they know that too, and there's a lot of 7-man protection in there. It's hard to get, like you pick your poison. If you're going to 7-man protect, you gotta bring a lot of people, and if you do, you're leaving yourself, in man coverage. So you got to kind of pick and choose. But no, I mean he played really well, but he also had he had space, and there was never a time in that game where he was uncomfortable, and that's on us.
Health-wise, Neal, did you come out relatively healthy?
Yeah, I think our feelings are hurt. Does that count? Nah, everybody. I'm pretty sure we had a light practice this morning. Everybody was out there, so we'll be back.
You mentioned maybe you should have gave more carries to Jaheim, even though he did get banged up, and that was part of it. Was there a reason why that didn't materialize that way during the game? Because he was somebody that Penn State hadn't seen the year before, really.
Yeah, so we got him touches early, and then he had that position. Like, I didn't get him carries late in the game because the game was decided. So, really, it's more of a second and third deal. And several of those, so most everything we do in the run game is read-wise, right? And I'm explaining it to you with the thought of he should have had more touches, okay? So, like, he should have had more touches. But everything we're doing is in the read game. And so there was a couple misreads where he should have got the ball. So, and there's at least 2 passing plays where he should have got the ball. So his touches should have been more. But myself as a play caller, I should have called more plays that get him touches as well. So that's kind of that. And he did get hurt. He did miss some time, but still should have got more touches.
Overall thoughts on the passing game? I mean, Garrett's stats were basically the same as they were last year in the game.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. You know, yeah, not real fired up, and we dropped more balls than we did a year ago. You think about it. You know, we had the first play of the game. That'd have been a 30-plus play. You know, we missed one on a seam ball. The ball gets knocked out of Cole's hand, and then there's another one we got our hands on, and those are all minimum 15-plus yard gains. You know, so. It's not this isn't a coulda. This is, you know, there were plays there we didn't make them, and then we missed a really bad third down throw right at the end of the half on a 3rd and 3 that you got to make. We missed a third down where we didn't go to our running back where you got to throw. That's the read tells you to throw the running back, and so we were not as efficient, and so we put a lot of time and effort into that. Now we're not going to bail out just because we didn't play well in the first game. But there wasn't the improvement that we were expecting to see. I think that's fair.
Just want to clarify something from the post game. You said you kind of just went away from motion because of the snapping issues, right? But you did go back to motion.
We went to it after we took that. So if you look at that play, so that was in the 3rd series. So the first series of the game, I think we went 6 plays. My mind's working right. So we went 6 plays. And we had a couple where the play clock. So in full transparency, our coach to player didn't work the first series. All right, so it went out, and I don't know what the case was, but we didn't have our coach to player. All right, so we were going to huddle the whole time, but because the coach to player went out, we didn't. So we had some issues there. First play after the turnover, we motioned. Garrett asked for the ball late. Ball hits him. Next play, we're going to run a running play after we got because. Credit defensively, we got to stop after that. It was still 0-0. We get the ball back. The very next play is motion play. We're going to run the ball. That was another carry that was supposed to go to Jaheim. All right, that ball goes boom off. It was kind of a really hard snap, and so at that point, I went off our opening script and just went to some very standard plays, really into that. Or we went to some motions that aren't affected by the snap. Does that make sense? Not all motions are affected by snaps. The timing ones are, where you're trying to give, really where we're motioning back to like 3 backs, it's a 3-back look. That's kind of, those are the ones that are all timing based. Yeah, and we kind of got away from those until later. So the ones, I guess the easiest way to explain this, again, I'm probably doing a little more football than I normally do, but the easiest way to explain it is the ones that are affected by timing where there could potentially be something hit, we got away from. We went back to them later, yeah. And that was after Garrett had settled down a little bit.
Okay, and then, I don't know if this is connected or not, but I know they had the player to coach, but like, you all were signaling stuff in too. You had the sheets up and everything. How much was that related at all, or did you guys have that plan?
So we did it more than we were planning on. Yeah, so the way you have to do this is you have to have, so if you're going to play, so we wanted to play with some tempo versus those guys because they match personnel. So we wanted to get in some. So when they went to their big sets, we wanted to play open. All right. What I mean by that, when they went to their 3 linebacker looks, we wanted to play open, and we caught them, and we had some success with that. But to play fast, you got to still use signals. Okay. And then when there's some times we're going to huddle. When you huddle, you don't need signals. So and then you've got to have plans for a rainy day, aka the system goes out, and so that's kind of the way. So you got to still have the signals. You got to have the ability to cover them up if you're going to use them. So yeah, does that answer your question, Mike?
Follow up to the motion and the snaps. In looking at those, it looks like, in addition to one that hit, the two that you talked about, a couple more were really close to the motion player. Are you trying to really cut that finely to create more confusion, hide it, or did you feel like there were some others that were a little tight?
Yeah, there's probably two more. Yeah, there's two more. And the thing about it is like when you so from a schematic standpoint, we're pretty simple in our schemes, but we give people a bunch of different looks. And there's some other people that do that, but that's kind of our MO is we're gonna be pretty simple in our schemes, but we're giving people different looks, and then who we're reading on different plays and how we're getting into our runs. Then we try to marry all our runs, all right, with screens and run action pass plays and things like that. And usually all the motions and all that stuff fit together, right? Where all the movement plays look the exact same, whether it's a run, it's a pass, a screen, et cetera, right? We're moving the pocket. And so to do that, you got to have some of those timing motions. And literally that's the first time, I'm not saying in ever, because I'm sure, but that's the first time in a really long time we've had those issues. And we work that because when you can have a ball in the summer, we work it. And so we do a ball handling drill every single day. And so we obviously got to do a better job of that, but that hasn't been an issue until that game. Now, it definitely was an issue in the game, Kevin.
An amazing build-up to the game, heading into that opener, and an amazing atmosphere there and the likes. Obviously, this week is going to be harder to get that emotion up, and maybe you shouldn't even get it up. Maybe it should be about correcting things, and then you go back to it with Pitt coming up. I mean, talk about the emotions that you're now facing heading forward.
Well, it's really about, to me, like, it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And there is some deflating into that, right? There's a build-up for the game. You feel like, whether it's a player or a coach, you feel like that you've got a team good enough to win the game, and then you just don't play well. So it's deflating for a coach, it's deflating for a player. But this is also a business, and you got another game to play. And you can feel sorry for yourself till about right now. And it's done, and you move on. Like, for me, this is kind of the last bit of the morning. I talk about the game with you all, and then I'm done. And I get to move on, right? And kind of go into a bunker and get ready for Albany and get ready to play, And so you got to flush it, but you got to learn from it, because if you don't learn from it, then you're going to repeat it. And there were some mistakes we made, in our preparation. There were some mistakes we made in our execution that cannot happen again, whether it's versus Albany, Pitt, Kansas, Oklahoma State, as we go on. Because we play a really tough schedule. I mean, we play a lot of really good football teams. And so we've got to correct those things. We've got to get our guys ready to play. Like, to me, and y'all hear me say this all the time, like, our guys being ready to play is, like, zero concern for me. Because we got enough depth now. If somebody's not ready to play, then we're going to get them out. And so, like, we only got one game this week. We're going to get back to work tomorrow. We'll have two really good practices, and we'll play considerably better on Saturday versus a team that we got a lot of respect for in Albany. Greg, you were asking something?
Yeah, admittedly, it's easy to second guess. You probably do it yourself when things don't go right. But the 2-point conversion, decision, a fourth down or two in the red zone, try that didn't go right. What were your thoughts behind those?
Yeah. Well, I would do every one of them again. So let's start. Where do you want to start? Fourth? Yeah, so I just think that when you get it under a yard, like, you got to go for it. And we weren't going to win that game with field goals. I felt like going into it to win the game, we were going to be in the upper 20s. And so just looking at what they did statistically last year, I really felt like 4, maybe 5 trips to the red zone was what it was going to be. And if we were playing, we ended up having 4, and we played poorly. So I may have underestimated that. But just looking at all the quality offenses they played last year, that's what they were getting. And so that's a thought there. You gotta go. You gotta be able to score touchdowns. We converted the other 3, so And then the 2-point play is what you're trying to do is, do you remember, what was the score there, Greg? You remember?
Brought it to 13.
27-12.
27-12. Yeah. So the thought process there when you're trailing, and that's a good question, is you want to give yourself the most chances, right? And so what you have to do is you have to think ahead like they're going to score. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to give yourselves, when you go for it, you know that you're going to have to do it another 2 times to be able to win the game. So the thought is you go for 2 because you're trying to play it in advance, because you know, like, okay, if you go 2 for 3 on 2-point conversion, that's really good. All right. And that gives you a chance to win the game. So just kind of thinking ahead. And y'all have heard me say this, and I've said this publicly before, is like a lot of those decisions are made before you go in, right? And I use the poker analogy or the blackjack analogy a lot, because I think it makes sense. I hope it makes sense to y'all. If it doesn't, then y'all tell me when we're done here. But is you play the rules of the game, right? And so whether it's blackjack or you're playing poker, you know, you have certain things that in playing blackjack you're going to hit, or you're going to split, or you're going to hold, right? And those are basically the rules of the game. And there's sometimes where the dealer's going to beat you and you played your hand the right way. And that's the way I think about these decisions within a game, is we do a lot of thinking about them before, and then that way it's not so emotional within. And just because the outcome isn't always exactly what you want it to be, doesn't mean that the decision was wrong. And that's the way I feel about those. You know, we were 3 or 4 on 4th downs. If I had to do every one of those again, I'd done every one of them again. Okay. And it's probably not asked about it for 4 and 4, right? And it's a fair question. I don't mean to demean the question at all. It's a fair question. But, and the same with the 2-point play, is you make those decisions in the processes. Now, if you're making poor decisions, you got to go back and look at your processes. But I feel really good about those processes for those decisions. The 2-point play, we had an MA. Like, we just didn't block it the right way. You know, the fourth, I would argue that our spot was unkind. Like, we very easily could have been 4 for 4. Yeah, Mike.
Results for you, for them.
First thing, what did you say?
First down results for you, for them, seemed like a pretty big difference. Just how much does that change when easier for them than?
Yeah, we had 19, they had 21.
Just the production on first down too.
Yeah.
It seemed like that was like 3rd and 2 every down for them. So,
Yeah.
Sorry, 2nd and 2 every time for them.
Yeah, that was good. Like, that's fair. Our P and 10s were pretty good. They had less success on P and 10s, more success on made first downs. Yeah, we had too many 3rd downs in the game. You know, if you go back and you look at it, I always, like, the way the stats read, it's always 3rd downs and then 4th downs. But if you go for it on 4th down, the 3rd downs doesn't mean as much, right? So it's really about end of possession downs. So our productivity on end of possession downs wasn't necessarily bad. Where we got ourselves in trouble, we were in 3rd and long too much. And that's tough sledding versus those guys, because we have to help. You know, you have to keep people in. You have to keep your back and your tight end in. And so now you're playing to their strengths, because they can, you know, with the 4-man rush, they're pretty stout, and then they can drop people under your 3. And they were playing a lot of match, like underneath defenders, playing man with underneath defenders.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you all.